Good morning. Everybody's already seated. This is cool. So as you are welcome here. Visitor, friend, or longtime member, you are welcome here. With little children, your partner, or alone, we joyfully welcome you here. You are welcome here as believer or doubter, as joiner or loner. You are welcome here. Feeling a part of us or not, full of energy or not, seeking a vision or a rest, you are welcome to join us as you are. We acknowledge that we are in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish, New Pierce, Blackfeet, and Anishinaabe people who shared the Helena Valley as hunting grounds. The indigenous story of the Helena Valley began long before the arrival of the Europeans. We honor those who walked before us. We honor the path that they have shown us in caring for this place for generations to come. We strive for justice and fair relations with their descendants. And Sam has offered to come up and light the chalice for us. If you will. And we have a beautiful new candle, thanks to Lennon. We gather together this hour of people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. And I'm rusty. I should have asked you to join me with that. It's been a while. Okay. Can we stand as you're willing and able for our opening hymn? Love Will Guide Us on page 131 in the gray hymnal. Lennon will give us our first reading.
Good morning. I'm just doing a quick sound check. Can everyone hear me? Perfect. Good morning for any visitors in the room. My name is Lennon Kepin. Pronouns are they, them. So this morning I'm going to read an excerpt from Reverend Keith Crone from a UUA Coming Out Day blog. In our Unitarian Universalist faith, we like to believe that we've gotten it, that we're better than this. Listening and paying attention are spiritual practices. They are also acts of justice. We think that we've done that. We're welcoming. Sexual orientation doesn't matter anymore. We have marriage equality. Anyone can come here. Yet I wonder, are we listening? Are we paying attention? This is the time and age for deep listening, being in community and respect. Do we notice who is speaking? Do we notice who is and who is not in the room? Are we waiting to speak, or are we paying attention? To paraphrase Gandhi, we must be the change we wish for the world. We must notice who speaks, who is in the room, and who we listen to. What people say. We must notice who isn't in the room and who needs to be. I don't think Frederick Douglass, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Harvey Milk, and Leslie Feinberg ever thought they'd say, all is well and we're done. I don't think they ever thought discrimination and bias and oppression would end in their lifetimes. And they kept working, they kept telling stories, they kept organizing, listening, paying attention, and staying committed to the hope that if they kept it, the world might become a better place. So should we. I believe in our future will be determined by how well we do these things. 2, starting with the spiritual practices of listening and paying attention. If we can honor the stories of others and our own stories, and noticing whose stories are not in the room that we need to hear, we cannot let up, or we will always be divided.
Thank you. That was good. Okay, now in our program we do a time for joys and concerns. And if your joy or concern is highly personal, let's save it till the end of the service since we're on YouTube. But if anyone has a joy or concern they'd like to share with the group, raise your hand and I'll come around.
Good morning, everyone. Again, for any visitors, my name is Len Kepin, pronouns they, them. So I have 2 joys to share today. My first joy is I have some family that drove all the way 12 to 13 hours from South Dakota. My mother and middle brother Tom are here to help me move and to spend some time with me. And my second joy is I have most everything moved out of my rental house and moved into my new place. And then one third and final joy, if you've heard the saga of my wood floor project that I'm working on, I'm excited to share that I had a contractor that was helping me finish the standing and refinishing of my floors, and so he was able to finish the floors finally on Friday, and they look beautiful, and I'm very grateful that I decided to hire out and not to continue to DIY my floors, so they will be look beautiful, hopefully for years to come, as I get settled into my new home. Thank you.
I'll work my way back.
Good morning. Our joy, I think, is of everyone here about this incredible weather we're having and the opportunity to be outdoors and enjoy and really worship what we have been given. And concerns that many of us have are probably similar to mine, which is we're concerned about the state of our nation, and we are now deeply concerned about the state of the world. The imbalance is very fragile right now, and the news from the Gaza Strip is terrifying. So may we all breathe together and feel peace.
Yeah, I want to echo that concern. Some of you may have met Uriel Caspi from Israel, who lived with us as he was an Archie Bray resident, and we heard from him this morning that now, in addition to the fighting in the south, that Israel's been attacked up from the north by Hezbollah and by Iranian militants. So prospects of peace are far, far away right now. I do want to express a joy, though, that this past week on Wednesday, like so many people, including many of you, turned out for my students' Tacos for Turtles dinner. Maybe 150 people came and celebrated and contributed support for the students to go to Costa Rica to save the ladderback sea turtles and learn more about being environmental scientists. And I just really want to express gratitude to Cass for 2 days of cooking and training me as a sous chef that resulted in abundant, delicious food.
My concern, of course, is for democracy, and folks need to not forget Ukraine. If you watch the news, you're going to hear some of our Congress people are really stressing we've got to pay attention to Ukraine. We were close to not funding them anyway because we've got some people in the House that do not want to give them additional resources. They are truly fighting for democracy. They are truly fighting to prevent World War III. We need not to be distracted, which is, I know, a bad word for the war that was just caused. That's going to go on for who knows how long, which is a religious war, is a far-right war, but the one in Ukraine is pretty simple and straightforward. We have someone who wants to take over their country, and if we don't protect it, we don't protect ourselves. They only want money from us. They don't want people yet. We don't have to send soldiers. So if you don't want to send your relatives to Poland or wherever Putin goes into next, call your congressman, especially Rosendale and Zinke. This is really serious stuff, guys. A lot of money is going to be expended. So far, we're not sending troops to Israel, but we're sending people to stand by.
I have a joy that I did the sun run yesterday, and I got a new PR at 28:30. My old PR was like 31:30.
I have a joy. I'll piggyback on what Katie was saying about the Tacos for Turtles, and another good local energy this week towards a huge problem, whether it's endangered species or environmental threat, was the sun run yesterday, where there was a good representation of Unitarian Universalists. And I think we ranged in age from 3 to 77, although someone that I didn't see could challenge me on that. And Sam ran, and Eli probably was the youngest biker, maybe. So it's just the money that is raised will go for putting solar panels on a couple more grade schools in the area. So sometimes in myself and in the search group, I think we can get overwhelmed by how do we start to get a handle on our part in huge, huge problems, some of which have just been spoken. And I think that Tacos for Turtles, the showing up for the youth who at the courthouse a few months ago, there were some Unitarians that were getting up early and forming a support gauntlet for the kids that were trying that case, and running yesterday for solar panels in this city. So that is joyful.
Okay. Yeah.
So the problems in our world are so overwhelming and complex that it gives me a great deal of peace to enjoy a sunny fall day.
Any more? Psst. So for all the joys and concerns that are unspoken, we will hold those in our hearts. Okay. So Sam and Mara? Mara, can you hear me? Time's up. They will send around the offering plates. So as a fellowship, we have heartfelt joys. Oops, sorry, wrong line. Can you put it under there? Just a second, Cheryl. Thank you for your gifts this day and for all the gifts of action that make this community possible. I hope that if you are a guest, please remain our guest. Your presence is a gift to us. Okay, and now we're ready for thank you for your loving hands. Page 25 of the Open Your Heart Songbook. Thank you for your loving hands, your loving heart, your loving ways. Thank you for the gifts you bring into the world each day. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember us who love you well. We know all the gifts you bring into the world each day. So thank you for your loving hands, your loving heart, your loving way. Thank you for the gifts you bring into the world each day. Okay, and we'll start the story for all ages. I'm gonna have to boot up the laptop a minute. Give me a second here and get the screen up. Try pointing it at the screen. At the screen? There, it's coming. Okay. Oh, something's happening. So is there anybody that wants to come up? Well, hey, your timing's perfect. Come on up. Oh, you've been running, huh? So I thought we'd do something a little bit different today. You can look at the book, but the pictures in this book are really cool. So you might want to look at the screen where the big pictures are. Does that make sense? okay, and hopefully get my head out of the way. So this is a story. So this is about Julian is a mermaid. Now, do you see that little thing above the A in Julian? Okay, that means you have to say that part stronger, so Julian. So this has a little bit of Spanish in it. So does anybody know what Spanish is for grandma? Abuela. Abuela, pretty close. Okay, and in this story, Abuela, Liam, the grandma calls, what do you think she calls her grandson? Do you think she calls him grandson or grandson? Actually, she calls him mijo, which means it's the simple for son. So, you guys can stand if you're feeling anxious. It's okay, but thank you. Okay. Now, this is a book for Nana. That's another word for grandma. That's what my grandkids call me, so. Now, okay, you were right. Okay. This is a boy named Julian and his abuela. And those in the background are some mermaids. Julian loves mermaids. I would too. So they're on the subway, and Julian has this book open. What do you think he's doing there? You think he's taking off his clothes on the subway? Yeah, he's imagining that he might take off his clothes. So mermaids live in the water, right? And take off your clothes before you get in the water. And the color changes, go to blue. So Julian is imagining, right? And he's in the water with the fishes and the octopus and the stingrays. And he's even developed a fin in his imagination. And a fish, what's the fish giving him? A little necklace. It's kind of hard to see in pink, but maybe it's a coral necklace. Vámonos, mijo. This is our stop. We're getting off. Let's go. He sees mermaids everywhere. Even on the street, little girls playing in the water. Abuela, did you see the mermaids? I saw them, mijo. Abuela, I am also a mermaid. I'm going to take a bath. You be good. Julian has a good idea. So he's taken his idea from the subway, taken off his clothes. Oh, what an imagination. Oh, what's the curtain make him think of? Ta-da! Abuela can up. Oh. Uh-oh. You think he's in trouble? Yeah, that look on her face was kind of a giveaway. Oh, he looks so sad. Come here, mijo. For me, abuela? For you, Julian. So she isn't mad. She wanted to give him something extra. And out the door they go. Where are we going? And you can see other people in the community. That's to give you a feel of where they are. So you'll see, says Abuela. Mermaids, whispers Julian. Like you, mijo. Let's join them. And they do. A great parade, huh? I liked that story. So what's so special about Abuela? What do you think, Vivian? She brought him to the parade. So at one point we thought she was going to be mad, right? But she just accepted him for who his dream, his imagination, and went with it, right? Okay. Well, I hope people in your lives accept your imaginations. Okay? And I think we can sing you guys out if you want to leave. Okay? So at this point, I'd like you to meditate on the concept of accepting folks for who they are. Some, maybe even the ones that are a bit of a challenge. And we'll give it a minute. So I'd like to introduce to you Shawn Reagor. He's our speaker for this morning. He will speak on building toward a collective liberation, which I'm very interested to hear. So Shawn, if you want to come up.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? How about now?
Oh, let's not hit you down.
Very, very few times in my life does the microphone get moved up when I start speaking. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Shawn Reagor. I use he, him pronouns, and I like to joke that I am professionally trans. And the reason that I say that is because I have spent 7 years working professionally for LGBTQ rights. In addition to that, I have spent many years before that organizing the LGBTQ community, providing support groups to trans, non-binary, and two-spirit folks, and testifying on the state, municipal, and in the courts. And today, I am really excited to join you all to talk about building towards a collective liberation. I was born and raised Catholic, and one of the things that I remember most from my Catholic education was a priest who spent about a year in each of his homilies talking to us about reaching out and serving and seeking the least, the lost, the littlest, the lonely, and the dying. Interestingly enough, the Catholic Church has a history of harming many of those groups. However, I think that maintaining this idea of seeking out those who are hurting, those who are hurting in any number of ways, be it they don't have the resources that they need to thrive, be it they are alone and seeking comfort, be it they don't have the ability to feel a part of the community. And I think coming from this framework does a couple of things. First and foremost, it creates an environment where we're able to consider who isn't with us. Who are we not seeking out? Who do we have to serve in our communities, and who also has the most valuable experiences for us? Who also has an opportunity to show us where the gaps in our communities are? Who also has the ability to tell us where the gaps in our own lives are? Who has the ability to show us the things that we should be thankful for, and also the things that we have a responsibility to be working towards? I think today's talk, the theme is building towards a collective liberation. So first and foremost, let's start with that. What does that mean? When I'm speaking about liberation, specifically what I'm speaking about is the concept that everyone has the access to the resources to thrive. And when I'm talking about access, I mean they have the resources right there and then, that they don't have to wait for resources, that they don't have to wait for support, that they don't have barriers that prevent them from being able to get the things that they need. All of us have things that we need, be it spiritual, be it physical, be it economic, or be it community-based. One thing that's important to think about liberation, and specifically on the theme of Coming Out Day, which is Wednesday, October 11th, is the realization that everyone has experiences of value, and everyone's identity matters, and every individual person matters. So how do we reach out to those folks? How do we provide support? How do we listen in ways that deeply and truly matter? One of the things that we oftentimes reflect on as LGBTQ community members, oftentimes when we're talking about Coming Out Day, is the value of coming out, the value of being our authentic selves, the ability to say, this is who I am, and it matters, and my humanity is just as valuable, and my experience is just as valuable as anyone else's. However, one of the other pieces about Coming Out Day are two realities. One of those realities is that not everyone is able to come out. Not everyone is able to feel safe and say, this is who I am, and these are my experiences. Not everyone is in a space where it is physically or emotionally safe to share those truths. In addition to that, oftentimes when we think about coming out, we think about the LGBTQ community, because it is members of the LGBTQ community who are expected to share their experiences. And yet, if we're thinking about a true liberation, doesn't it mean that individuals aren't expected to share these experiences, but are welcome and supported in our environment creates the opportunity for them too. Oftentimes when we think about liberation, it's not a matter of an expectation of sharing experiences. It's not a matter of creating an environment where people have to come out, but it's an environment where people can share their realities without the experience of coming out. Meaning that just as someone might come out as LGBTQ, they might also come out as straight or cis or share the things that affirm them in their identity. Someone baking a cake and saying, you know, this is a wonderful gift I have for our community. This is how I feel strong with the gifts that I have, with the experiences that I share. This is how I feel comforted and loved by the person that I love. But oftentimes when we think about building towards a collective liberation, there's another key word in that piece, collective, and the reality that we are together as a human population, as animals, as living beings on this rock flying through the universe. And when we think about collective, it means multiple things. It means working collectively, and it means that no one is left behind. We all have resources to share, and to build toward that collective liberation, we all must share with our world. Sharing our experiences, sharing our truths, sharing our economic resources, sharing our strengths, and also sharing our vulnerabilities, sharing our humility, and sharing our willingness to grow. So why does this matter? There was actually a study that came out that found that schools that have gay-straight alliances have a statistically measurable difference and lower levels of suicidal ideation in straight boys. The reality is, when we think about the ways that some of us are oppressed, and when we work towards removing that oppression, it benefits all of us. These forces of oppression that we oftentimes fight, whether it be political, whether it be social, whether it be economic, these forces of oppression know the best way to defeat us and to beat us and to hold us in chains and keep us from that liberation is to divide us. And so oftentimes we see these tactics cause division, cause loneliness, cause harm, cause belittling, and cause death. It gives us a better understanding of where work is still to be done. Many of us recognize or say that with the decision of the Supreme Court to recognize gay marriage and to require all states to recognize gay marriage, that marriage is one and that we all have marriage equality. However, the reality is that marriage equality is still out of reach. And what specifically do I mean by that? It means the opportunity to gain the benefits of marriage, whether that be through the tax system, whether that be through the legal recognitions of marriage, whether that be through the ability to visit the loved ones or make decisions about someone's death and dying, is still out of reach for those people who are in plural relationships, are still out of reach for those people living with disabilities. Most folks don't consider or aren't aware that because of the burdens placed on someone to qualify for disability insurance, it prevents them from getting married. In fact, oftentimes people have to make the decision about getting divorced so they can qualify for those benefits and be able to access the resources that they need. Yes, gay marriage has been won, but that doesn't mean that marriage is within access for everyone. It doesn't mean everyone is able to benefit from those resources. Similarly, in the legislative session, one thing that I really witnessed is that every single one of the bills that was aimed at and targeted the LGBTQ community, and specifically the trans, non-binary, and two-spirit community, had devastating impacts to other communities. The harms that happen to the LGBTQ community also cause harms to the rest of our society. When we use gay and other slurs, when we use the word gay as a slur, it causes harm to others. Oftentimes when we think back to that statistic about why it might be that schools that have GSAs have lower rates of suicide among straight boys, what we find is that those schools that have GSAs and have those gay-straight alliances have expectations that the word gay won't be used as a slur, that breaking gender norms or going outside of what is socially considered acceptable is broader and more expansive, and the harms perpetrated against those who go outside of that are lessened. It means that all of us are able to love the things that we love, to share the strengths that we have, to claim the identities and experiences that we have in a way that makes all of our world stronger. And so each of us working to build that collective liberation, all of us sharing our strengths and our vulnerabilities and our willingness to grow, creates an environment that allows others to flourish and creates that environment that allows us to grow and thrive even more. Oftentimes when we think about the forces of oppression, or one thing that I have seen is the values of white supremacy. Oftentimes those values create tenets that create this idea that there's limited resources, that we have to fight each other to claim what we need. And the reality is this world has an abundance of resources, whether it be economic, whether it be social, whether it be individual, whether it be mental health. All of us should be working to develop these resources and make sure that the least, the littlest, the last, and the lonely are able to access those resources, the ones that need it most, because oftentimes those are the folks that have the most to share, the most value, the most to teach us about life and our perspectives, the most to share spiritually as well. So one of the things that I have really learned, going back to this concept of abundance of resources, is that oftentimes the forces of oppression use this thought of limited resources to divide us. A couple of years ago, I was at the Rialto. I just finished a meeting with one of my coworkers, and just happened to be sitting there, and it was the middle of the day, there were only two other folks there. And they were talking about Black Lives Matter. The bartender, happening to know a little bit of my history and background, kind of reached out to me and said, "Well, Shawn, what do you think? Is it that Black lives matter? Is it that all lives matter?" And fortunately for me, I had just heard something that I was able to repeat, and some very valuable wisdom that I was able to share from another source. When we talk about this idea of it being wrong to say that Black lives matter, because then we lose sight of all lives matter, it brings us back to if we think about different communities. One of the really cool things that happened, there's this long-standing rivalry between Boston and New York. And one of the things that happened after September 11th is that during a Boston Red Sox game, they played New York, New York as a sign of solidarity for those who had suffered after the terrorist attacks of September 11th. Similarly, after the Boston Marathon bombing, the communities in New York shared around a lot of different graphics and posts about being Boston strong, and a number of different Boston-based songs. Oftentimes when we think about September 11th and all of the things that entailed from it, one of the things that happened is a lot of people started wearing the shirts, "I Heart New York." And that doesn't mean that other cities didn't matter. It didn't mean that other cities weren't suffering. However, it did mean that there was something particularly that had happened in this time and in this space that had a huge impact on the lives and livelihoods of the individuals living in New York. Everyone was affected by that day. And in showing solidarity with the folks that were most impacted, although many of the harms that followed as a result of some of the political decisions that were made from that day, we were able to show solidarity with the folks that were most impacted. And similarly, when we think back about what it means to say Black Lives Matter, saying Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that we're saying that other lives don't matter. Instead, what we're saying is we understand and we see the particular impact this group of folks is facing. We're keeping in mind the harms that individuals have, the experiences that they have. We're not saying that their lives are more sacred. We're saying that their lives are just as sacred and particularly vulnerable right now. And it is our duty and responsibility to understand and change that so that all of us are able to share together and grow together and be who we are, so that all of us are able to access the resources and the needs, the resources and the strengths that others have to grow and thrive. This process of building isn't something that just happens in a one-time instance. We don't simply gain an understanding of the world and the impacts that it has and the people that are suffering right here and now, and then only work towards that goal. Just as the world is changing, we also must continue to grow and change and repeatedly approach with humility and say, who are those who are suffering? What are the things that I have done that may have impacted those? How can I help them grow? How can I grow? And how can we be better together? How can all of us live collectively in a more liberated society? And ultimately, what we find is that parts of all of us are the least. Parts of all of us are lost. Parts of all of us are littlest and lonely and dying. And just as we approach our mental health by taking our strengths and addressing the parts of us that have experienced harm, we should also do that as a society and continue to grow and continue to take care of each other. Thank you. Should I turn it back over to you, Marianne, to lead if there's any reflections or questions?
Yeah, I can use the other mic and go around and see if anybody, are you up for?
Great.
fielding
Yes.
some questions?
Happy to answer questions.
Okay. That was really powerful. Thank you. I enjoyed listening to you.
Thank you.
Lots to think about.
Good morning, Shawn. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for that presentation. It gave me a lot of things that I want to reflect on and things that I can do to personally think about the perspectives of other marginalized folks and what I can do to create more safe spaces to make sure the most marginalized voices in our community are able to have the voice to be able to share their experiences and really just to be themselves without the premise of having to specifically come out and just meet them where they're at in their journey. I wanted to ask you a question. Our board of directors has decided to move forward with a social justice project to allow folks in our congregation to add pronoun stickers to our name tags. So I am just wondering if you have any advice for us as we are rolling out this project, how we can provide education to folks about the importance of pronouns and sharing their pronouns and why they might consider to add their pronouns to their name tags, as well as recognizing that there are folks in the community that might not feel comfortable in sharing their pronouns, specifically folks that are trans and gender expansive, to allow them the space to be able to choose to share their pronouns or not share their pronouns, and just creating spaces where we are meeting folks where they're at, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, great. You know, I think that touches along perfectly with what I was speaking about for a number of reasons. First and foremost, why pronouns are important. Oftentimes when going back to this idea of thinking of those who are most impacted, sharing pronouns, the folks that are most impacted are trans, non-binary, and two-spirit individuals. And oftentimes that sharing of pronouns is an opportunity to share with others how you would like to be respected, how you would like to be addressed. It's a gift to the community, but it's a gift to oneself to share pronouns in order to be able to say, this is who I am. This is how I would like to be respected. And it's a gift to all of us to have pronouns shared with us so that we can better understand how to support and how to love those folks in our community. In addition to that, we find not only does it benefit trans, non-binary, and two-spirit folks, it also benefits a number of other folks, especially when I'm sure all of us know individuals in the community who do not identify as trans, non-binary, or two-spirit, but may present in a more androgynous way, may present in a way that we don't always know what their gender identity might be. It allows us to respect and show respect for everyone. In addition to that, it touches on this theme of Coming Out Day as an opportunity to share, but not an obligation or an expectation of sharing, where we're able to say, this is a piece of myself, and maybe this is a piece of myself I'm not ready to share yet. But people being able to share pronouns and other folks who may not identify as trans, non-binary, or two-spirit, creating that opportunity in that space where pronouns are shared regularly, creates a space where people feel more comfortable sharing those pieces of themselves. And then in addition to that, I think it touches on this idea that this building process, the building towards a collective liberation, isn't something that just happens once. It's an opportunity for all of us to continue to challenge ourselves to grow, to continue to challenge ourselves, to listen to the needs of other community members, and to continue to allow ourselves to learn new things, to grow in a space where we may have a little bit of discomfort, and that education is key in that process.
Let's hope we do ascribe to all that.
Shawn, are you still at Montana Human Rights Network at the bank?
So I am actually just about to start a new job. I was at the Montana Human Rights Network for 7 years, and I recently accepted a new job, which I start tomorrow at Bridger Care. I will still be doing LGBTQ related work, and the Montana Human Rights Network continues to be committed to LGBTQ equality.
Hi, thank you for coming and speaking. And I like a lot of what you had to say about abundance as we live in a culture that is rife with consumerism and capitalism. We so often are pushed to think of our resources as limited. And we have so much potential for abundance and resources in so many ways. And I think it's really important to think about that as we include people.
So one thing that has been on my mind for most of my life is how women are regarded in our world. And I'm very tuned into hearing about marginalized people. And I feel like the fact of women being marginalized is the elephant in the room. And the fact that our governments are primarily in the hands of male forces, violent forces often, not nurturing forces, disturbs me so deeply. And I don't have to come out as a woman, I'm clearly a woman. But I am not necessarily recognized as equal to men in terms of my power. And that really pisses me off. And so that's where I'm kind of thinking about where I want to put my efforts, is to rebalance the power in the world away from violence and domination. And I'm not quite sure how this fits into what you're talking about today, Shawn, except that it's a huge concern for me and for our world, just the things that have been happening in the last year and the last week. So I don't know where to go with it except say,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a piece of this too is that it really does tie in, right? Because the same forces that seek to oppress women oftentimes are the same forces and use the same tactics to oppress other groups. And in order to prevent people from countering those experiences, in order to prevent people from truly achieving equality, oftentimes what happens is they use this division. So for example, we can think of one of the easiest and most blatant bills in regards to this is the transgender bill related to women's sports. And it is a bill that says, it passed the Montana legislature back in 2021. It is a bill that says that transgender women cannot play sports with other women. And they call it the Protect Women's Sports Act. Well, if you think about it, there are a lot of things that female athletes have been asking for. They've been asking for better access to resources, equal access to visibility of their sports, more sponsorship, more support for coaches, more support for the athletes, equal playing conditions. They're not asking to keep some women from being able to play sports. And the science says that transgender and female athletes have the same physical abilities as all other female athletes. So I think one of the things that we really see with this is they take an area where there's some misunderstanding in the area of transgender athletes and transgender biology specifically. And then they use it in a way to create division with people who value women's sports. And they use it in a very cloaked way to create harm that happens not just to transgender athletes, but now to all female athletes. Who's to say that someone won't come in and point to a cisgender athlete and say, I think that they're transgender, and now all of a sudden that cisgender athlete, that is someone who does not identify as transgender, who does identify with the sex assigned at birth, could be subjected to very invasive tests. Right? Now all of a sudden, where's the line to say, what's the right amount of testosterone for someone to be able to play women's sports? If there is a woman who has a significant amount of testosterone that is naturally occurring to her, and they identify as their sex assigned at birth, but they have a high level of testosterone, well, we have to protect women's sports from them, and they can't play women's sports. And it divides and divides. And so oftentimes we have to think about all of the ways that oppression affects us all, because it seeks to divide us. It uses the same playbook. It causes harms to all of us.
Yes, it does. And this is very important. Hopefully you can stay a bit for coffee. We're
Absolutely. Thank you.
Late, but thank you, Shawn. So I chose a reading, a short reading, 560 in Singing the Living Tradition, but it's from Dorothy Day. So how about if I read the first line and you can read the second line, I'll read the third, and we'll alternate like that. People say, what is the sense in our small effort?
They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time.
A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that.
No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless.
There's too much work to do. Okay, if you'll join us with our closing hymn, Spirit of Life, which is 123 in the gray hymnal. Stand if you're willing and able. Spirit of life, come unto me. Speak in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots wholly close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Okay, Sam. So as When Sam gets up here, we'll extinguish the chalice and say together. Thank you. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Okay, and I believe we end our YouTube broadcast at this point. So are there any announcements from the congregations or things that need to be said for joys and concerns that weren't said before?